The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room Admiral Park had ever seen. It stretched upward like the inside of a mountain, with platforms rising in circles around the center. On those platforms sat the representatives of 17 alien species, looking down at the small group of humans standing on the floor below. Kept his back straight and his face empty of emotion. He had served Earth's space fleet for 40 years. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and led rescue missions to burning stations, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Nothing had prepared him for the feeling of being so small. The alien called sat on the highest platform. He was a creature with skin like cloudy glass and eyes that held no warmth. His people had ruled this part of the galaxy for 11,000 years. To him, humans were nothing more than insects that had recently learned to fly. "The matter is decided," said. His voice sounded like ice cracking. "The expanse belongs to the hegemony. Your claim is rejected." Ambassador stepped forward. She was a small woman with gray hair and steady hands that had signed 100 treaties. But today, those hands were shaking. "High Arbiter, please," she said. 3 million humans live in the expanse. We have built cities there. Our children were born there. The colony is 60 years old. By council law, that makes it our territory." Made a sound that might have been laughter. Council law protects members who contribute to the council. What has humanity contributed? Your ships are slow. Your weapons are weak. Your species is young and foolish. You are guests in this galaxy, Ambassador. Guests do not make demands. Around the chamber, other aliens began to laugh. Some clicked their mouths. Others whistled through tubes in their necks. One massive insect creature named rubbed his front legs together in amusement. "You humans are entertaining," said. "You walk into this hall as if you matter, as if your little colony of apes is worth our time." Captain Shin stood behind the Admiral, her hands curled into fists. She was young, only 32, but she had been chosen for this mission because of her sharp mind and steady nerve. Right now, that nerve was being tested. She wanted to scream at these creatures. She wanted to tell them that humans had crawled out of caves and reached the stars in less than 10,000 years. She wanted to remind them that Earth had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that would have destroyed weaker species. But she said nothing. Speaking out of turn would only make things worse. Ambassador tried again. "We have followed every rule. We have paid every tax. We have opened our borders to your inspectors and your traders. We have done everything you asked. All we want is to keep what is ours." "What is yours?" Leaned forward, and the light passed through his glassy flesh in a way that made him look like a ghost. "Nothing is yours. Everything humanity has, you have because we allow it. The colonists will be relocated. This discussion is over." The word hit the humans like a physical blow. Everyone knew what relocated meant when they said it. It meant ships coming in the night. It meant families torn apart. It meant people disappearing and never being seen again. Admiral Park finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the perfect silence of the chamber. "And if we refuse?" Every alien in the room went still. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then smiled. At least his face moved in a way that might have been a smile. It was not a pleasant thing to see. "If you refuse," he said slowly, "then we will teach you what they have taught every species that has challenged us. Your 47 ships will burn. Your colonies will empty. Your will kneel before us. And humanity will learn its proper place in this galaxy." He raised one thin, translucent hand. "Call the vote." One by one, the species voted. The voted against Earth. The voted against Earth. The voted against Earth. 16 species, one after another, chose to abandon humanity. Only a dying race with nothing left to lose, refused to vote against them. When it was done, Ambassador stood in the center of the floor with tears running down her face. 40 years of diplomatic work, destroyed in minutes. 3 million lives, signed away with a show of hands. Admiral Park touched her shoulder gently. "We should go," he said. They walked out of the chamber in silence. The aliens watched them leave, some with contempt, others with something that might have been pity. The massive doors closed behind them with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. That night, Admiral Park stood on the observation deck of his ship, the Resolve. He watched the lights of Nexus Prime grow smaller as they flew away. Ambassador stood beside him, her diplomatic mask finally shattered. "What do we do now?" she whispered. "They have taken everything from us, our colonies, our pride, our future." The Admiral was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, harder, colder. It was the voice of a man who had made a decision that would change history. "We go home," he said. "We close our borders, we tell the galaxy nothing, and we prepare." "Prepare for what?" Park turned to look at her. In his eyes she saw something that made her blood run cold. It was not anger, it was not sadness, it was patience. The patience of a hunter who knows that time is on his side. "For the day we return," he said. "And on that day they will learn what humanity becomes when you take everything from us." The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving Council space behind. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs. For 73 years, Earth went dark. The borders of the Sol system closed like a door slamming shut. Defense platforms surrounded every entrance point, destroying any ship that tried to pass. Communication channels went silent. Trade routes were abandoned. The humans simply vanished from galactic society as if they had never existed. At first, the Council did not care. Humanity had been a minor species, useful for cheap labor and simple tasks, but nothing more. When they disappeared, most aliens simply forgot about them. "Let them hide," said when asked about the silent humans. "They are cowards. They will die alone in their little corner of space, and the galaxy will not notice." But Director noticed everything. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind that worked like a computer. On the day of the humiliation, she had watched the Council meeting from a secret bunker beneath the mountains of Korea. Before Admiral Park's ship had even left Nexus Prime, she had already begun to plan. "We have 2 generations," she told the new unified government of Earth. 2 generations to transform ourselves into something the galaxy has never seen. President Moon was a careful man. He looked at the plans had created and felt his heart beat faster with fear and excitement. "You want to turn our entire species into a weapon," he said. "I want to ensure our survival," replied. "And then I want to make sure no one ever threatens us again." The work began immediately. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden from any watching eyes, the first secret shipyard was built. Workers carved tunnels into dead rocks and filled them with factories. Engineers worked day and night, designing ships unlike anything humanity had ever made. The old human ships had been slow and weak, built with technology borrowed from alien races who gave them only scraps. The new ships would be different. Human scientists studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They took it apart, learned how it worked, and then made it better. Commander Bay was born 20 years after the humiliation. She grew up hearing stories about the day the Council had laughed at humanity. Her grandmother had been a colonist on III, one of the 3 million people who disappeared when they came. No one told exactly what happened to those colonists, but she could see the pain in her mother's eyes whenever the subject came up. She could feel the anger that burned in her own chest whenever she thought about it. When she was 18, she joined the military. When she was 25, she was chosen to command one of the new ships. The first time she stepped onto the bridge of a Fury-class battlecruiser, she felt tears running down her face. The ship was beautiful. It was fast, powerful, and deadly. It was everything the Council had said humanity could never build. "We designed it specifically to kill ships," the chief engineer told her. "Their shields have a weakness, a specific frequency that makes them fail. We spent 30 years figuring it out. Ran her hand along the console. How many of these ships do we have? Right now, 50. By the end of the year, 100. By the time you are an admiral, 1,000. 1,000 ships. The number seemed impossible, but had learned that nothing was impossible for humans when they had something to prove. The years passed. The shipyards grew. 50 ships became 100, then 200, then 500. Scientists developed weapons that could cut through alien armor like paper. Engineers created engines that were faster than anything the Council possessed. Doctor led the team that built the greatest achievement of all, the Prometheus drive. It was a new kind of engine that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. With this technology, human ships could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and disappear before the enemy could respond. "They will never see us coming," said when she presented her invention, "and they will never be able to run." 50 years into the silence, the finally sent scouts to check on the humans. They found the borders sealed and the defense platforms armed. They tried to communicate but received no response. "They are hiding," concluded with a wave of his hand. "Too afraid to face us. Leave them alone. They are already dead." The scouts left, never knowing how close they had come to discovering the truth. Behind the sealed borders, 1,000 warships waited in the darkness. Their crews trained every day, running simulations of battles against Council fleets. They studied alien tactics and found weaknesses. They prepared for a war that everyone knew was coming. Admiral Park was old now, over 100 years old, kept alive by the best medical technology Earth could create. He spent his final years watching the fleet grow, knowing that he would never see the return. On his deathbed, he called Commander Bay to his side. She was 40 years old now, a rising star in the fleet, chosen to lead when the time came. "I will not live to see it," Park whispered. "But you will. You will take our fleet back to Nexus Prime. You will stand where I stood and face the creatures who laughed at us." Took his hand. "What should I tell them?" The old admiral smiled. It was a cold smile, full of patience and purpose. "Tell them that humans remember. Tell them that humans adapt." His grip tightened on her hand. "And tell them that humans always return." He died 3 days later. The next year, the last ship was completed. 1,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering, each one crewed by men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity. Humanity had not forgotten about the galaxy. The time for silence was ending. The time for return was about to begin. The expanse was a graveyard now. Where 3 million humans had once lived, worked, and raised families, there was only silence. The cities had been torn down. The farms had been burned. The very air had been stripped away, leaving dead rocks floating in the emptiness of space. Admiral Bay looked at the sensor readings and felt her heart turn to ice. She had known what they had done to the colonists. Everyone knew, but seeing it with her own eyes made the anger inside her burn like a star. "All ships report ready," Commander Han said from beside her. He was her second in command, a calm man with steady hands and eyes that missed nothing. 1,000 vessels, all weapons charged, all crews at battle stations. Nodded slowly, "Open a channel to the fleet." Her voice carried across the void to every ship, every crew member, every soldier who had waited their entire life for this moment. "This is Admiral Bay. We stand at the edge of the expanse where our people once lived and died. The Council thought we would accept their judgment. They thought we would crawl away and disappear. They were wrong." She paused, looking at the empty worlds on the. "Today we announce our return. Today the galaxy learns what humanity has become. All ships follow my lead." 1,000 warships moved as one, emerging from the shadow of a gas giant where they had been hiding. They formed a wall of metal and fire that stretched across hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Each ship burned with engine signatures that Council sensors had never seen before. A patrol group detected them immediately. 12 hegemony vessels, each one crewed by soldiers who had spent their careers bullying weaker species. Their commander opened a communication channel, his translucent face twisted with confusion and anger. Unidentified vessels, you have entered hegemony space. Identify yourselves immediately or you will be destroyed. Smiled, it was not a friendly smile. My name is Admiral Bay of the Earth Defense Force. You are in space that belongs to humanity. You have 1 hour to leave. The commander stared at her. For a long moment he did not speak. Then he began to laugh. Earth, impossible. You have no fleet. You have no technology. Our intelligence says you are hiding in your little system, waiting to die. Your intelligence is 73 years out of date, replied. The hour begins now. They did not wait. They were proud creatures, confident in 11,000 years of military success. They had crushed 100 rebellions and conquered 1,000 worlds. 12 ships against 1,000 seemed like bad odds, but they did not believe for one moment that human ships could be a real threat. They learned the truth in 6 minutes. Captain O led the first attack wing. Her ship, the S Fury, dove into the formation like a hawk among pigeons. Human weapons, designed specifically to break hegemony shields, tore through their defenses as if they did not exist. Human pilots, trained in simulators that had analyzed every Council battle ever recorded, anticipated every move their enemies made. The first ship exploded in a ball of blue fire, then the second, then the third. Commander Han watched the battle with wide eyes. Admiral, they cannot touch us. Our shields are holding at full strength. Their weapons cannot penetrate. I know, said quietly, that was the plan. 6 minutes after the battle began, 12 warships were nothing but expanding clouds of debris. Not a single human vessel had been seriously damaged. Opened a channel to the wider galaxy, broadcasting on every frequency that Council ships used. This is Admiral Bay of the Earth Defense Force calling Nexus Prime. Humanity has returned. We are coming to visit the Galactic Council. We expect to arrive within 2 days. I suggest you prepare a welcome. She paused, letting her words sink in across 1,000 worlds. And please make sure High Arbiter is there. We have unfinished business. The message raced across the stars at the speed of folded space. It reached Nexus Prime within hours, causing panic in the Council chambers and chaos in the streets. For the first time in 11,000 years, the hegemony scrambled their entire fleet in response to a threat. 3,000 warships gathered around Nexus Prime, the combined military power of 17 species. It was the greatest concentration of force in galactic history, assembled in desperate response to an enemy they had thought was already dead. On worlds across the galaxy, other species watched the news with a mixture of fear and fascination. Some had suffered under the hegemony's rule. Some had watched humanity's humiliation all those years ago and felt ashamed of their silence. Now they whispered among themselves, wondering if the galaxy was about to change forever. Admiral stood on the bridge of the S Vengeance, watching her fleet move through space like a river of steel. Around her, 1,000 crews prepared for the battle that everyone knew was coming. Commander Han approached her with a tablet showing the Council fleet's position. 3,000 ships waiting for us, he said. They outnumber us 3 to 1. Studied the display for a moment. Then she looked up at her crew, at the men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment, whose grandparents had suffered humiliation, and whose parents had built the instruments of revenge. They still do not understand, she said softly. They still think this is about numbers. They still think this is about technology. She turned back to where the stars stretched out toward their destination. This is about 73 years of preparation. This is about 3 million murdered colonists. This is about a species that was told it was worthless and decided to prove the galaxy wrong. Her voice hardened. They outnumber us 3-1. It will not be enough. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the expanse behind. Nexus Prime was waiting, and humanity was coming home. Nexus Prime had never seen such a fleet. 3,000 warships from 17 species formed a wall of steel around the Council's capital world. Battle cruisers floated beside destroyers. Carriers launched patrol craft alongside ships from a dozen other civilizations. It was the greatest display of military power in galactic history, assembled to crush an enemy that should have been dead long ago. High Arbiter watched from his command center, his translucent flesh darkening with something that might have been worry. But he pushed that feeling down. He had ruled the Council for over a century. He had seen rebellions rise and fall. One fleet of primitive humans could not threaten everything he had built. "They are fools to come here," he said to his advisors. "We will destroy them completely, and then we will finish what we should have finished 73 years ago. We will burn Earth itself." His advisors nodded in agreement, but some of them looked uncertain. The reports from the Expanse had been disturbing. 12 hegemony ships destroyed in 6 minutes, weapons that cut through shields like they were not there, technology that should have been impossible for such a young species. Then the human fleet arrived. 1,000 warships emerged from folded space in perfect formation. They moved as if controlled by a single mind, each vessel taking its exact position without hesitation. Their hulls were angular and sharp, designed for war rather than beauty. Their weapon ports glowed with charged energy. Admiral Bay stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, studying the enemy formation on the tactical display. 3,000 ships against her 1,000. Any other species would have seen those odds and despaired. Saw them and smiled. "Open a channel to the Council," she ordered. His face appeared on her. He looked older than the recordings she had studied, his translucent flesh clouded with age. But his arrogance was unchanged. "You dare come here with weapons raised?" he demanded. "Your species fled like cowards 73 years ago. Now you will pay for this insult with your lives." High Arbiter replied calmly, "73 years ago you called humanity insignificant, primitive, laughable. You stole our colonies. You murdered 3 million of our people. You told us to learn our place." She stood, and behind her, every officer on the bridge stood as well. "We learned." She gestured to Captain O's ship, the Remembrance. "One vessel against 300. Watch carefully." The Remembrance broke formation and accelerated toward the Council fleet. 300 hegemony vessels moved to intercept, their commanders eager to prove that one human ship was no threat. What followed changed everything. Captain did not try to fight all 300 ships at once. She danced. Her vessel moved at speeds that should have been impossible, weaving through the enemy formation like water flowing through rocks. Her weapons struck with surgical precision, hitting exact points where the enemy shields were weakest. In 10 minutes, 47 Council ships were destroyed or disabled. The Remembrance returned to formation without a scratch. Silence fell across every bridge, every command center, every watching world. 3,000 Council soldiers stared at their displays in disbelief. 47 ships, destroyed by a single enemy vessel in less time than it took to eat a meal. "That was one ship," broadcast to the stunned Council forces. "I have 999 more. Would you like to continue, High Arbiter?" His response was exactly what it expected. Pride was more powerful than wisdom in the hegemony. The High Arbiter had spent 11,000 years believing his species was invincible. He could not accept any other truth. "All ships," commanded, "destroy them. Destroy every last human vessel. Leave nothing alive." 3,000 ships surged forward. The Battle of Nexus Prime lasted 2 hours. In later years, it would be studied in military academies across the galaxy as an example of perfect tactical warfare. Wing Commander Song led her squadron through the heart of the enemy formation, her pilots moving with coordination that seemed almost magical. They had trained together for decades, running thousands of simulations against Council tactics. They knew every move their enemies would make before the enemies knew it themselves. Captain commanded that targeted enemy command ships. One by one, the flagships of different species went dark, their bridges destroyed by precise strikes. Without their leaders, enemy fleets fell into confusion. Captain Lee led the defense teams that protected the human fleet from counterattacks. His ships formed mobile shields, intercepting missiles and energy beams meant for more valuable targets. Not a single important human vessel was lost to enemy fire. And through it all, Admiral directed the battle like a conductor leading music. She saw patterns that others missed. She anticipated moves before they happened. She turned the Council's greatest strength, their numbers, into their greatest weakness. When the firing finally stopped, the result was clear. Human losses: 12 ships destroyed, 47 damaged. Council losses: over 2,000 ships destroyed or disabled. The greatest military force in galactic history had been broken in 2 hours. Opened a channel to the Council chamber, where the representatives of 17 species sat in stunned silence. Some were crying. Others simply stared at nothing, unable to accept what had happened. "High Arbiter," she said, "humanity would like to discuss new terms for our relationship with the Council." There was no response from. His command ship had been one of the first to fall, though suspected he had survived. Creatures like him always found ways to survive. "We will be landing a delegation within the hour," she continued. "I suggest you prepare to receive us." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "And this time, I think we will require more comfortable chairs." The channel closed. Around Nexus Prime, the wreckage of 3,000 ships drifted in the void, a monument to 11,000 years of arrogance finally brought to an end. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Council chamber felt different now. Ambassador walked the same path that Ambassador had walked 73 years ago, but everything had changed. The elevated platforms where alien species had once looked down on humanity were gone, removed in haste before the human delegation arrived. The laughter that had filled this room during humanity's humiliation was replaced by fearful silence. Was 63 years old. His grandmother had been a colonist on III, one of the 3 million people who disappeared when they came. He had joined the diplomatic service specifically for this moment, training for decades to speak the words that would reshape the galaxy. Admiral Bay walked beside him, her uniform crisp and her eyes sharp. Behind them came 50 human officials, scientists, and military officers. In orbit above the planet, 1,000 warships waited in patient formation, a reminder of what would happen if this meeting did not go well. High Arbiter was not in the chamber. After the battle, he had tried to flee Nexus Prime in a personal shuttle. Captain Lee's patrol group had intercepted him within minutes. He was now in human custody, awaiting trial for the murders of 3 million colonists. A name spoke for the Council now. They were a dying race, their population declining for centuries. They were also the only species that had refused to vote against humanity all those years ago. Perhaps that was why they had been chosen for this role. "The Council recognizes the delegation from Earth," said. His voice was tired but not hostile. "We acknowledge that circumstances have changed." "Changed?" Admiral murmured quietly. "That is one way to describe it." Ambassador stepped forward to the central podium. He looked around the chamber at the representatives of 17 species. Some would not meet his eyes. Others stared at him with open fear. A few, simply looked exhausted. "73 years ago," began, "my grandmother was taken from her home on III by hegemony soldiers. They told her she was being relocated to a new colony. They loaded her onto a transport ship with 10,000 other humans." He paused, letting the silence stretch. That ship was never meant to arrive anywhere. It was flown directly into the sun. My grandmother and 10,000 others burned alive while the galaxy watched and did nothing. Several council representatives shifted uncomfortably. The hegemony had never publicized the details of their relocations. Many species had not known exactly what happened to the human colonists. "We did not come here for revenge," continued, "though we would be justified in seeking it. We did not come here for conquest, though we have proven we could take whatever we wished." He placed a data chip on the display pedestal. "We came here to ensure that what happened to my grandmother never happens again, to humanity or to any other species." The terms were displayed for everyone to see. Full recognition of all human colonial claims, immediate reduction of hegemony military forces, creation of a new council court with real power to enforce its decisions, a mutual defense agreement requiring all species to protect each other from aggression, and one final requirement that made every representative in the chamber uncomfortable. Any species that committed mass murder against another would face United Council response, including military action. "You ask us to give up our power," the representative protested. "You ask us to surrender our right to act as we choose." "We ask you to stop being murderers," Admiral replied flatly, "though I understand why you might find that difficult." The debate lasted for hours. Some species argued against the terms. Others, especially those who had suffered under hegemony rule, supported them eagerly. But in the end, everyone understood the truth. Humanity had won, and these were the conditions of peace. The vote was called. 16 species voted to accept. Only the abstained, too proud to agree but too weak to refuse. When the session finally ended, Ambassador remained at the podium. The chamber was emptying, but he had one more thing to say. "My grandmother told me something the night before the hegemony came for her," he said. His voice was quiet, but the room fell silent to listen. "I was only a child, speaking to her through a video screen. I did not understand what she meant until much later." He straightened, and in that moment he seemed to carry the weight of every human who had suffered, every colonist who had died, every child who had grown up with stories of humiliation and loss. She said, "They have not yet learned the most important lesson about our people. They think that when you beat us down, we stay down. They think that when you hurt us, we flee." His voice hardened. "But that is not what humans do. Humans remember, humans adapt, and humans always return." 1 year later, a monument was built on III. The planet had been restored, its atmosphere rebuilt, its cities rising again from the ashes. The first new colonists had already arrived, young families eager to reclaim the world their ancestors had lost. The monument stood in the center of the largest city, a wall of black granite stretching toward the sky. Carved into its surface were names. 3,217,000 names. Every human who had died in the relocations, remembered forever. Admiral Bay attended the dedication ceremony. She was older now, her hair touched with gray, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. She had been named commander of the combined council fleet, a position that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Ambassador stood beside her, along with Doctor and dozens of other heroes of the return. Behind them stood thousands of new colonists, watching in silence as the names of the dead were read aloud. It took 3 days to read all the names. When it was finally over, walked to the base of the monument. She reached out and touched the granite, feeling the carved letters beneath her fingers. Among those names was her own grandmother, lost when was just a child. "We came back," she whispered, "just like we promised." The galaxy had called humanity insignificant, primitive, laughable. The galaxy had learned better. Humans remember. Humans adapt. And humans always return.